Hey there, Matt Samudio here, and this is episode 6 of my video series on Slackware Linux. For this video, I'm going to diverge a little bit, so I'm going to give you the heads up right up front. I'm going to talk about software freedom, and if the philosophical / political nature of these discussions isn't something you're into, I would hope that I can get you to tune in to my next video, which will be a return to the the technical topics that I typically have been focusing on. So, but this for this episode, this software freedom topic has been kind of burning a hole in my pocket, so to speak. Really want to kind of speak my piece on it, and I think I have maybe some things to add to the conversation around software freedom that it doesn't seem to me like people talk about certain things enough. So I wanted to get some of this out. So, okay, to start out with, if you're not familiar with software freedom or the topic around software freedom, I would really suggest, I would just really recommend going out to the FSF, the Free Software Foundation website, and kind of reading through some of these introductory type of pages and topics to get your feet grounded around the concepts. So what you'll find there is some philosophical content and a lot of the positions and argumentation for why software freedom is important. Also, check out the GNU website. That would be www.gnu.org. There's also some very important philosophy there. The Free Software Foundation and GNU are very closely related, kind of the same camp of people running them. I would say GNU is more about focusing on providing free software as well as providing a kind of a home base for actually dealing with free software, and they hold the licensing, like the GPL, the GNU GPL licensing, and so they're really kind of the hands-on with actual software topics, whereas the Free Software Foundation is more like an activism type of so they're obviously focused on free software, but their approach at it, or the context with the Free Software Foundation is more around the political and activism type part of it. I think anyway, it seems that way to me. So anyway, check those out. Especially under the GNU site, you'll find things like the definition of what free software is, and certainly there's a lot of debate over whether people like the definition set up by by GNU and the Free Software Foundation. Some people, some criticize some of the concepts that are in the definition. There's the thing called the 4 essential freedoms, which is central to the definition of free software. Some people, there's some debate over the merit of the 4 essential freedoms. I kind of tend to agree, for the most part, with most of what the GNU and Free Software Foundation organizations have, defined and laid out and argued for. So take that for what it's worth. Anyway, definitely go out and look at that stuff. Okay, so what is free software actually all about? So, just to kind of give the basics to start out with here. When we talk about free software, we're not talking about simply software that you don't have to pay anything for. That is, commonly referred to as gratis when you get something that you don't have to pay for. Free software can be without cost, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, and that's not really the concern, or that's not really the central point of the topic. What we mean by free software is software that you do not have to give up any of your freedoms in order to use the software. So another way of putting it is it's freedom respecting software. And where this, kind of, where the concern around either free or non-free, the contrast between free and non-free software has kind of grown over time as the the ecosystems around how software is created, managed, and used have kind of evolved over time. And it's become clear that there's, I guess, what you would call predatory or less than ethical practices around a lot of what happens in selling software for money. And it's kind of difficult to really go into all of the, I mean, to just kind of, give a brief summary to really explain what all that means. I'll probably get into some examples or some, I'll talk about some things around this as I go in the video here. But let's just suffice it to say it as this introduction that selling software has kind of become a con man's game, or a like a little bit of a shill game. Kind of like selling used cars. It may be a bad analogy, I don't know. But that's so for people that advocate free software are really kind of zeroing in on the notion that if you're going to run software on your computer, you have the right to have the knowledge of what that software is doing. And you also have the right to control what that software is doing on your computer. And the software itself is not really a tangible, sellable asset. It doesn't make sense in an ethical sense that the software itself is a tangible, sellable asset. And part of that kind of comes from really just the basic fact that in order to prevent you from, making copies and sharing the software, there's a bunch of unethical things that has to be done to basically force you to not share and copy and share the software. And then there's the notion of the whole thing about you have the right to have a say over what the software is doing, which really comes down to if you want to change what the software is doing, you have the right to do that. So, and this is really you could kind of say, okay, all that sounds great, but if you sign a contract to buy, and use software, and that contract has it in it that you don't have those rights, well, yeah, that's what non-free software is all about. And so free software respects your rights to those four essential rights: to use the software exactly as you want, to know what it's doing and change what it's doing, and also share make copies and share the software, as well as make copies and share the changed software that you have made modifications to. So those are kind of the four freedoms, and there's for a long time there's been a thriving free software ecosystem, and the people that kind of live in that ecosystem have come around to the conclusions and seeing how things work in the non-free software world, or the non-free software ecosystems. They've come to kind of call out the fact that, really all software should be free, because it's the only ethical way to really do software. So that's kind of where this all kind of comes from. And by no means will I pretend that there's no debate over any of this stuff. There's certainly people that disagree over various points and various conclusions around all this. So, but I'm just kind of trying to get the topic out here, and then I have just a few things that I want to say about it. And so there's that. So how this relates to Slackware, uh, we have myself and Ivan, one of my internet buddies. Um, he goes by the handle Mellicamp. So we are collaborating on a kind of an extension pack to Slackware, and we're calling it FreeSlack. And what FreeSlack is, you can see the website at freeslack.net. And basically what it is it's Slackware that has been sanitized of all non-free software. And there's no real big, huge changes made. It's literally true and for real Slackware. The biggest change that's made is we simply take the exact same version of the kernel that is distributed with the Slackware release. We take the exact same version, but we use the Libre kernel instead of the, you know, the regular kernel, and that's still, you know, very minimal in terms of change, because the Libre kernel does the exact same thing that we're basically doing, which is they take the exact same version of the kernel that they're going to compile, and all they do is they simply they prune out anything that's non-free. So they don't make really changes either. They just take out non-free stuff. So we start out and we even use the same configurations and the same build scripts that Slackware uses. And we build the Libre kernel exactly the way Slackware builds the kernel, same version, everything. And then we prune out any other non-free packages of software. And then we create a release, you know, basically like a pseudo release. So you can install Slackware from a regular Slackware DVD, and then you can just simply make a couple changes to your package management, and then, you know, basically upgrade or switch over from Slackware to FreeSlack with just a few commands. Or you could, you know, also install regular Slackware and then just, you know, clean it up and prune it yourself. Get rid of all the non-free stuff, because we also publish our recipe or our process for how we sanitize Slackware. It's completely transparent. You could do it all yourself manually if you want, but we just go ahead and do it for you, and you can install Slackware straight off of our installed DVD, or you could install FreeSlack off of our installed DVD, or you can take those other routes as I mentioned. So freeslack.net, check it out. If you're concerned at all about software freedom, and if I have any effect whatsoever in this video of being convincing about software freedom, then maybe you'll enjoy checking that out. So there's that. Okay, so onward. Why should anyone care about software freedom? Okay. Here's the first thing that I want to bring up that I don't think people talk about a lot. And that's, so you select software, whether you select non-free software, whether you select free software, you know, that's just the tip of the iceberg. It's just the beginning of the story, because what a lot of people don't consider, or they don't realize, is that the fact that you've picked software and are using it, your use and your activity around the software, especially over time, generates data and generates some kind of result that, and by and large, pretty much most of the time, that it's that result, the data produced, the results produced, you know, whatever it is that results from you using the software, that's what's actually of value to you. So, you know, let's just call it collectively your data. And the software that you pick has a tremendous impact on how or if you can access your data. You know, and what methods, what techniques or mechanisms will be available to you to access your data. So, you know, just as a kind of an example, a non-free piece of software may save your data in some kind of file, and that file may be formatted in some way that is proprietary and opaque. In other words, the only thing that can possibly know what that format is that piece of software itself. And so, in essence, that software has your data held hostage. You have to use that software in order to get to your data. By contrast, a piece of free software will most likely save your data in a way that is more friendly, that isn't going to put any restrictions on how you can access your data. Most importantly, you know what that software is going to be doing, and you have picked it for its free properties. In other words, that it doesn't use anything proprietary or that's not disclosed. So, let's say this otherwise non-free piece of software tries to save your data in a closed file format. But if you were to have the source code, you could then look and see what that file format is all about, and you could possibly crack it. So that's part of the mechanism that non-free software uses to kind of hold your data hostage or hold other aspects of your activity around the software, holding all that hostage, is by remaining closed source. In other words, they're going to keep it a secret what is happening under the covers with that software. And that they can leverage that in just a multitude of ways to, basically coerce you in lots of different ways. And not the least of which is, they can keep it a secret from you, the fact that maybe they're dialing home. They're calling home over the network and maybe delivering some of your data to someone that you don't want it to delivered to. And you wouldn't even know that that's happening because it's all closed source. And it's all, they keep it all secret. So, and that has been known to happen. There's quite a bit of hype about it, actually, in recent times here. So, but that's not the limit or the extent to which non-free software can hold you hostage in various ways. So, and your data is the most, immediately, the most immediate cause for concern. So yeah, I mean that. There's some of the motivation. We could get into some philosophical and sociological motivations for why free software is important, but it's probably good enough to just start with that one about not being harmed in a liberty sense by the software that you're using. There's a pretty diverse range of threats to software freedom that are kind of active and rolling in these times. The obvious one that everybody can immediately be aware of is non-free licensing, and this is kind of the norm. There's a lot of software for sale, and there's a lot of myths and a lot of misconceptions around. Some people think that if you buy a piece of software because you paid for it, you can expect support from the vendor of the software. And they may even tell you that, but that doesn't necessarily reflect reality. And a lot of people would be surprised at how little support one might get from a vendor that they purchase software from, but it goes really big. I mean, it gets really big and complicated. So there are huge companies that spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on software, and then and they have contracts, and it's part of it's like they think they're really well covered, and it's like they literally justify the expenditure, the huge amount of money that they're spending. They justify it by, well, we have a vendor on the hook to support us if something goes wrong. And you would be just amazed at how really huge professional commercial software companies will wiggle out of those support agreements and screw over their $100,000 or $1 million customers by basically sandbagging or, being elusive around the terms of support that they're obligated to, to provide. You'd be amazed at how bad the situation is there. So, I mean, that's a misconception that simply because you paid for software, you are entitled to and are going to get support. That's like nothing could be further from what is reasonably expected. Another misconception is that, well, you only get what you pay for. So if something's free, it's got to be bad. It's got to be defective or not worth much. Otherwise, why would they give it away for free? That's another thing that nothing could be further from the truth. And, certainly there's a lot of free software out there that was written by some 12-year-old in his basement or something, his mother's basement. And yeah, there's crap out there for free. But I'll tell you what, there is just as much horseshit crap commercial software that people are paying for, and what they get is like horrendous quality. So the shoe is on both feet there. So there's no way that the difference is if you get a piece of software and it's crap, it's not quite as bad if you didn't pay anything for it. But when you get a piece of software that's crap and you had to pay for it and you can't get a refund, and the stupid organization won't support you either, well, nothing could. I mean, and trust me, it happens. It's all over the place. So there's that. And then, the whole thing about, somebody's going to be accountable. Yeah, right. You don't think that these big software companies that create software and sell it, you don't think that they've got their asses covered? Read end user license agreements. I mean, it's unreal how detailed and how much legalese is packed into those things. They've got themselves covered so they can wiggle out of liability. So there is nobody ever on the hook, so to speak, in terms of you buy software and something really bad happens through your use of the software and you lose $1 million worth of business because of it. There is nobody, not Microsoft, not Oracle, not IBM. There is no company, no matter who you bought the software from, that is going to end up being held accountable for that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that's another misconception. Okay, so what's the solution to this, or what does the solution look like? So I would advocate, just like the GNU organization and the Free Software Foundation would advocate, I would advocate that people should become aware and have comprehension around this topic and these issues, and that it should compel everyone to make choices. And that's what the solution is around. That's what the solution looks like, is it's all around choice. So you're going to, and it's choice at every level, and it's paying attention to the choices all the time. In other words, not getting lazy and not opting for convenience over your health. People really understand the whole fast food thing, and the thing about healthy eating. It's like it's really easy and it's an indulgence and a convenience to just grab a burger and fries. It tastes great. It's easy. A lot of times it's cheap. You don't have to cook. You don't have to do dishes, etc. But it's not good for you. It's not healthy. And, it's really easy to see how people are constantly tempted to go the convenient route. Let's just stop and get Taco John's, or let's drive through McDonald's. But if you care about your health, you're going to not do that. And the other thing is it kind of becomes, there's that whole contamination and bleed problem, in the sense that you develop tastes and cravings for that stuff the more you eat it. And it's exactly the same thing with software. It's convenient and easy often because the people that write non-free software, that's their hook. They're shooting for and trying to put something in make software that's going to really hook you and reel you in, because they want, and it's not because they care about you. It's literally not because they they know that you have a problem that needs to be solved with good software, and so they're going to provide that good software for you and thereby be your friend. That's not what it's about. They want you as a customer, which translates directly into they want your money. And they also don't want to spend much money to do it. So they're going to put everything in the software that is the most appealing to you to get you to buy it. But they're going to spend as little time possible on anything that's under the covers that's going to cost them more money to address. But a lot of the stuff like security, stability, portability, and anything that preserves your freedom, they're going to skip all that because it costs them money to do it. They can make the software appealing to you. They can make it fancy with cute little juggling bears and graphics and all sorts of things that make you go, ooh, this looks so pretty, and it's so easy. I just push a button, and they can give it all the whiz bang glitzy stuff to make you feel like it's cool to buy. Just like the fast food, it's immediate gratification and indulgence. It tastes great going down. But you're sacrificing your health. And with the non-free software, you're sacrificing your freedom. And, there's another aspect of that as well. This kind of contamination and bleed effect. The more, the population around you, in other words, the whole ecosystem is, in a way, it's kind of poisoned. So like with fast food, because fast food is so convenient and so tempting, it kind of sucks a lot of people in, and it becomes very popular. And so then the fast food places start springing up all over the place, and there's kind of a self-feeding feedback loop there, where our entire society now has drifted away from healthy eating habits, and it's just everywhere. We're saturated with fast food and unhealthy eating, and that even makes it even more easy and tempting. And if you're looking for something to eat, it's a lot more difficult to go out and find a healthy alternative that's either convenient or whatever. I mean, I'm not trying to make excuses. I mean, we should all be able to feed ourselves and take a little extra effort to eat healthy. I'm not saying that that's not the case. But what I'm saying is there definitely is a poisoning of the ecosystem with fast food. And again, it's just like with software. The non-free software ecosystem tends to bleed over and contaminate and make it difficult for free software choices. And not the least of which in the ways that happens is in a legal and like a political and legal and let's just go corporate fashion. So, just for various reasons, the corporate community has kind of been sucked into non-free software for various reasons. And then all the people that work at those companies get kind of predisposed or just kind of set up where they're led into thinking that non-free software is their only choice or the only thing that can work for them. So again, there's this kind of poisoning of the ecosystem thing that goes on. By contrast, with free software, free software is pretty much always created with a much more innocent and pure intent. Nobody really creates free software with an ulterior motive to try to get to your money. The free software is created, number one, it's created to be free. And and people that create free software, they're very serious about the ethic that the software is free and respects your freedom. So that there's no ulterior motive. It's completely not present. And furthermore, the whole reason to even create the software to begin with is they literally are focused on whatever it is, the feature, the problem, or the, what kind of a solution that the software is providing. That that's the actual real motivation for the software, and it tends to be, better focused on that. So that's one of those things that I think just makes all the difference in the world. And another, it's like another tick, or another tally on why software should be free. There should be no ulterior motives. Oh yeah, let me talk a little bit about this here. Let me give a little bit of reality around how software is actually created. So one of the really stupid things I hear from people when in conversations around free software is, well, how would any software ever get created if you can't charge money for it? Nobody's going to write software if they have to give it away. It's like, that's the stupidest thing in the world for anybody to say. That just shows that they don't understand anything about how actual software is created. So let me clue everyone in here. Most of the overwhelming majority of software is never sold, not even for a penny. It's never written to be sold to begin with. What I'm talking about is in-house software development. This is how most software gets written. And it really comes down to what's known as buy versus build. So what you get is a company that they do something amazing. Their business is about doing something amazing, and they need computers to do it. And they look out at well, what software could we buy to do this amazing thing with our business? And either it turns out that there is no software to do what they're doing because they're doing something amazing that only their company has figured out how to do. So there's no software to buy. Or, and this is actually more common, there's software that comes close, because usually when people write software to sell, they're shooting for as big of a market as they can possibly hit. And so their software is a one-size-fits-all. It's not specifically targeted for what you want. It's targeted for what Jim and Joe and Bob and whoever wants, and maybe what you want fits in there. So companies very frequently look out at the market at software they could buy, and they realize there might be some stuff that's a little close, but it doesn't hit the bullseye for us, and there's all this cost or this baggage that comes along with buying the software. So either the software doesn't exist, or the company realizes that they're better off building it themselves, and so they choose to write the software themselves. They hire some consulting developers, or maybe if it's a real long-term thing and the company sees that they have long-term interests to be served by having their own software engineers, they'll hire some, and they keep them on staff. And those software engineers are being paid by the hour or paid by salary. Just like you hire a janitor to sweep the floors. You pay him, he sweeps the floors. You hire software engineers. And now, granted, the pay is probably a little higher. Sometimes not. But anyway, you're paying them by the hour. You're paying them for their time and their labor. That's it. The software itself gets written, it gets created, it gets used in the business, but the business, and this is what I think is really important, and nobody ever talks about this, that business that makes that build, that in the buy versus build decision, they decide to build their own software, they are choosing to preserve their own freedom. And part of this is, it's their software. They paid somebody to write it for them. They have the source code. They can do whatever they want. They can fire that guy and hire a different guy, and they can make whatever changes they want. And they do that. This plays huge into the decision to build the software. Especially, it's like, well, we don't know what kind of changes we're going to need to the software, depending on what evolves in our business and the needs of our production and the needs of our efforts and everything. We may need to make all sorts of interesting changes to the software. We can't count on some other vendor to make those changes for us. We want to be in the driver's seat. We want to own this software, and you know, be in the driver's seat in terms of how the software evolves and how it can be changed and all this stuff. So they're preserving their own freedom. Now, someone might object and say, well, it can't be free software because they're not letting anyone else use it. That doesn't matter. Um, and it's also not necessarily true across the board either. Um, I'm perfectly free to write my own software and just use it and not give it to anyone else. That doesn't mean it's not free software. Every single one of the one user of the software has complete freedom. So that's the way it is with the companies that write their own software. And here's the thing: like I said, the majority of all software in existence was in-house developed, not for sale. And that's how software gets created without the need to have it be non-free software. That's one way. Now, interestingly, some software that was created like that as in-house development, it ends up getting put out as open source or free software because the company that created it either doesn't mind sharing it, or they've moved on. They've created another piece of software that's their new generation, and they're using that instead. They've retired this one, so they'll just throw it out there and donate it, and people can use it, whatever. That happens. Another thing that happens is that companies will look and say, ooh, look at this. Here's a piece of already free software that was created by somebody else. This actually comes pretty close to what we need. We'll go ahead and use this because it's open free software. We can make some changes to it, some enhancements, and then we can make it do exactly what we want. And we don't have to do all the work up front to do it. Somebody already did 95% of it. So we'll just build on that, make some small changes or some additions, and then we'll have exactly what we need. Oh, and by the way, since we benefited from somebody else's free work, let's go ahead and contribute our changes that we made back to the free product. That happens a lot, and there's nothing wrong with that. Companies don't really have any problem with that. Now, obviously, there's some exceptions. There are things that involve company secrets, stuff like that. That it makes sense that maybe companies might want to hold that private, and there's nothing wrong with that because that's a totally different topic. Having some software that's really just for you and there's something secret in it that you need to keep secret, that's completely different than selling software and making sure that the software stays closed and obscurity protected to enforce your sale of the product. That's a totally different deal. So there's that. There's a lot of other interesting ways that software gets that free software can be created, and often does get created. I mean, another one is pretty much all the hardware drivers are not sold. So in a sense, there's an indirect connection to some kind of profit motive. So someone is selling a piece of hardware. Well, in order to get people to buy their hardware, there has to be drivers, driver support for it. So they will write the software, the device drivers, and they may build the cost of the development of those drivers into the price of the hardware they're selling. I don't think there could be any argument against why, that's okay. And if they, some hardware manufacturers do that, and they get their money, they get paid through the prices of their hardware. They get paid for what they put into the development of the hardware and the device drivers. And yet, the software itself, they publish the source code and they make it open. They open source it and they make it free software. Some hardware manufacturers do that, and some don't. And I think it could be argued that they should. Certainly, the ones that do that make their driver code free, I can guarantee a lot of the open, the free software enthusiasts or people that care about free software are buying those people's hardware a lot more. So, and as awareness of this builds over time, as people get smarter about this, hopefully it will start making a difference, and more of the hardware manufacturers will make their driver software free. So there's that, and there's another interesting aspect where, and I think we've seen this with some fairly large free software products, where company, either one or more companies needs something. They need some piece of infrastructure, or they need some piece of some software for something kind of specialized, but so they know that there's, if they try to go out and buy it, it's going to cost a ridiculous amount of money, and if they also just try to build it just by themselves, it's also going to be very difficult to deal with. So what they do is they collaborate and make it a free software product, and they're not going to sell it, they're going to use it. But they also want to put it out there and make it free software, because then they're going to get all the testing and contributions from the communities, and they don't have to support it in terms of, they're not going to have 50 million people calling their helpline and tying up their phone lines and making them staff a huge help desk and have to incur all the costs and overhead of supporting software that they sold. Instead, it kind of becomes a big collaboration between the companies that need the software and that kind of want to see it made, and they could definitely contribute to it and everything. But it's also it's a collaborative effort between all interested parties, and the software is maintained free. This is another thing that happens, and works out pretty well. No, another thing that happens is, and this may not be the happy ending kind of story, but there's people that create software for free they're doing it for the reputation that goes with it. So I'm going to create a really brilliant piece of software, and I'm going to get a reputation as a really cool developer. And so then somebody's going to be interested in putting me to work on cool stuff that I can work on, and I'll get paid for it. That's one motivation. Another one, which is the one that's maybe not quite the happy ending, is I'm going to write a really cool piece of free software. It's free so that I can get a lot of help in doing it. People will test it, and I'll get it out there, and I'll have time to work on it and tweak it and get it into the right kind of state. And then somebody's going to buy it from me. And then maybe they turn it into a closed, non-free software. That's the not so happy ending. But some people write free software with those kind of motives in mind. They're thinking they can get the attention, and maybe it turns into they can cash in on it somehow. So there's that. But there's a lot of ways that free software makes sense. There's plenty of motivation for people to write free software. Another thing I don't think gets talked about much, I think that there should be an obligation by government, military, let's call it the public sector. I think the public sector actually should have an obligation to use free software wherever possible. Now, I'm not talking about that the CIA, is doing some kind of spy work and they need to use free software for that. If it's something that has to be kept secret by the nature of the job that's being done, like intelligence type stuff, yeah, that's different. Those are exceptions. But for the most part, a secretary in a government office does not need to be paying Microsoft to use, Microsoft Office to write memos and print out the memos and stuff. The public sector should be using available free software wherever possible. They should be using LibreOffice for their office productivity software. They should be using Linux wherever possible. It's not ethical. It's not right that the taxpayer dollars go to feed the non-free software beast with its with its one of its primary jockeys being Microsoft. There's no justifiable reason why, when there's LibreOffice available, that government should be spending taxpayer dollars on licenses for Microsoft products. And there's a very plausible danger of a conflict of interest there, because let's look at Microsoft. Here's a company that has clear ethical issues in their behavior, and I would find it really hard. It's not plausible to discount the possibility that Microsoft is heavily involved in lobbying the government for laws and regulations and that kind of stuff in Microsoft's favor. Even just the notion of taxpayer dollars flowing in that direction. At the very least, it's irresponsible spending. It's one thing if what is being purchased can't be gotten any other way. So like high technology for weaponry or something. It's like, yeah, the government has to pay Ball Aerospace or whoever for whatever the really high technology that's in some of the weaponry. There's nowhere else they can get it from. So that's a different thing. But when you're talking about off-the-shelf software that there's clear free alternatives for, that's irresponsible spending, and the government shouldn't be able to do that. But we let them, so I don't know. But yeah, the danger, and Microsoft's products in all the government. Look at how unethical Microsoft's behavior is. So do we really want spyware and malware and backdoors into our government's offices? I don't know. It's not right. Even just the risk. I just think it's wrong that the government isn't using free software wherever possible. So there's that. So there's a lot more stuff to talk about on this topic, and I feel like I've been able to say some of the things, bring out some of the things that I wanted to. Maybe I didn't quite hit everything, but if you guys want another video like this where I can maybe flesh out some or maybe hit some things that I missed or whatever, you let me know and we can try again. But for now, I think I'm going to leave it at this, and basically just even just getting out the notion that I really do care about software freedom, and some of the things that I thought, or hopefully I've been able to articulate some things that get you guys thinking too. So I'm gonna close this one out, and next episode I am going to return to my more technical topics, unless you guys want me to return and hit some other things on this one. But otherwise, back to the Slackware series as normal next episode. So talk to you then. Thanks. Bye.